Zweig Group invites all AEC industry leaders to the 2024 AEC Small Business and Entrepreneurship Forum, the premier event for small firms in the AEC sector. Experience innovative strategies and insights on May 21st, crafted by Zweig Group's industry experts. Engage in keynotes and interactive sessions focused on recruitment, retention, and business growth. Join Zweig Group for this unique networking opportunity and take your business to new heights. Secure your spot today and be part of the AEC industry's future. Visit zweiggroup.com for more information. The Zweig Group team looks forward to welcoming you.
Welcome to the Zweig Letter Podcast, putting architectural, engineering, planning, and environmental consulting experts straight talk in your ear. These podcasts deliver great interviews with industry leaders and Zweig Group's 3 decades of invaluable research, leadership, management, marketing, client, and HR advice directly to you, free of charge. The Zweig Letter Podcasts let you develop personally and professionally, wherever you are.
Hey folks, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Zweig Letter Podcast. I am your host, Randy Wilburn, and today I have a very special guest. I've actually gotten another individual from Big Red Dog, Shaun Theriot-Smith, to join us for this episode of the Zweig Letter Podcast. We're doing something different nowadays, where we're trying to reach out to as wide of an audience as possible in the design industry. We're not just trying to talk to the titans of industry within the design space, not the heads of architecture firms and engineering firms, even though we've had Shaun's boss on, Will Schneer, but we're trying to reach out even to the guys and gals that are on the main line of these design firms, making things happen on a daily basis. And it's something new that we're going to be doing on the Zweig Letter Podcast in 2018. So if you're hearing this podcast for the first time and you want to get involved and you want to be heard and kind of share about your experiences coming out of school and getting into the design industry and just kind of sharing for others what you have experienced working at your organization and the difference that you're making. We'd love to hear from you, and there'll be plenty of opportunities both in our show notes as well as on the podcast itself for you to connect with us. So again, thank you so much for joining us today. And Shaun, it's so great to have you on the show. I really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to join us on the TZL podcast today.
No, I appreciate it, Randy. No, it's an honor to be here. I'm a longtime listener. Like I said to you before, I'm a podcast addict. I listen to anything and everything I can get my hands on. It's an excellent platform for professional development, just current events, whatever. I think audio platform is an excellent way to get stuff done. Get that factor of multiple things doing at once. But yeah, I wanted to kind of go back into my background a little bit. I'm a project engineer at Big Red Dog in the Houston office. For folks who've been listening to your podcast before, they've obviously heard from Will previously. I think your most previous episode potentially has him on it. But so I came about Big Red Dog from coincidentally another podcast I was listening to, Engineering Career Coach with Anthony Fasano, which is another great podcast. Obviously, I think you guys have had conversations in the past. But Will was on that podcast, and at the time, this was probably about a year ago, I heard Will kind of go over some of the cultural key points and touch points of Big Red Dog and some of the strategic initiatives that he really espouses. And at the time, I was working for a public works firm as an intern. I graduated last December, and I as he was continuing to have a conversation with Anthony, it came to me like this guy understands a lot of the aspects of what my generation and those coming into the industry are really looking for into a professional engineering position and just design services in general. I can tell you, being a part of this firm for now about 6 months, a little over 6 months, a lot of the things that Will talks about with you and other people in terms of his interviews, it definitely is something they practice in addition to preaching. One of the key aspects that we really focus on as part of our values is open communication, and kind of going over the top with communication. Something that I've always felt in terms of my relationship with clients, relationship with my superiors, and anybody who works on my team. I feel the need to over communicate rather than under communicate. And I always feel that somebody will tell you, okay, perhaps you're not sending it, you're sending too many emails, or you're telling me too much information. You can always dial it back down, but you don't want to be in a position where you're not communicating enough. So that's something that Big Red Dog really hits a home run with, is over communicating to clients, making sure that we're showing them what we're doing on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, making sure they know that they're getting their money's worth, and we're not they're not sending us off for 3 or 4 months and then not hearing from us for at least several weeks at a time. They're hearing from us every week. Another thing is open book management, and also just fair and transparent billing practices. That's something that really resonated with me as well. And really, we kind of chase after those visionary clients. We do a lot of really incredible work. We kind of cut our teeth on urban infill and mixed-use development in the city of Austin, and we're starting to spread with offices in Houston, San Antonio, Dallas, now Sugar Land and Lubbock. We're really focusing on getting those visionary clients doing really incredible projects within our communities. That way, we get buy-in not just from on the client and project management side, but your design professionals are really kind of excited about it. Even the drafters, the designers are really bought in and invested in the product because they're making something that's really cool. They could drive past with their family on a weekend and show, I did that. That's something I contributed to. And that's something that really gets people motivated and interested in doing the work that we do. It's not always just sanitary lines or, wastewater treatment plants or something like that. It's a really cool project. So over the past 6 months, it's been a bit of a roller coaster of really interesting projects and, getting this fresh look at this industry. And, it definitely has hit home for me personally that whatever I heard on the podcast a year ago is really actually real and true and accurate in this organization.
Wow, man, you've done my job for me. I could just wrap this up right now, man. That's absolutely amazing. I appreciate you sharing that. One of the things that stood out, and I guess, so if I'm hearing you correctly, part of the reason why you're actually at Big Red Dog now is because of a podcast.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I'm a bit of a podcast addict. I listen to everything under the sun, whether it be, professional development from, yourself and Anthony Fasano on the engineering side. I listen to Tim Ferriss, Gary Vaynerchuk. I listen to a ton of startup podcasts. I listen to a lot of comedy podcasts. I got to give a shout out to MaximumFun.org. It's my favorite brand of podcasts. Just all sorts of stuff from NPR. I have in Houston, and I think you've talked about this before, some communities are more favorable to listening to podcasts. In Houston, we have a lot of traffic.
Yes.
I live a little bit of away from downtown where we have our office in the Arts District, and I spend probably about 10 hours a week in a car.
Wow.
So I got an Audible subscription. I got my podcast, and I make my money's worth of that commute for sure, because that's where I get my information. That's where I keep up to date on current events. That's
absolutely
that's my force multiplier for me on my development side. When I get to work, I get to work, but when I'm on the car, I can get all sorts of data downloads and hit that 1.5x, 2x, and just go through all the podcasts I can. So
yeah.
That was kind of the coincidental aspect of finding this firm.
Well, and you found the silver lining, I think, in what for a lot of people is a real labor, right? Of having to commute to and from home to work and all that stuff. And, you've basically made your car your driving university. And you're not basically saying, well, I've got this terrible commute, which a lot of people do. But you've turned it around and made it something positive where, 10 hours a week, you're able to edify yourself on so much great information. And I certainly applaud you. I always tell the joke that, when I was in the Boston area, my commute was about 45 minutes. I'd ride up and down 95. And now, I can't even listen to a complete song on my commute to my office just because I never have the time. So I totally get it, but I get the information when and where I can, especially when I travel. I'll be on a plane tomorrow. I'll get a chance to pop in some podcasts and listen to them on the long flight that I'll be on. So, you have to kind of make it, happen where you can, but I certainly, encourage everybody listening to this to really take up podcasts and listen to them because there's so much great information out there. And if nothing else, just listen to all the books on tape, the or Audible, if you will. There's nothing on tape anymore. I mean, it's all digital, but you can just get on your phone, and I've got several books on my phone, and I just pop up my Audible app and I just go for broke. So
yeah, same here, definitely.
Yeah.
I get invested in this.
We're probably kindred spirits in that way. So that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, so tell me, you've shared some really great information about your experiences there with Big Red Dog. You've been there about almost not quite a year yet now. Now you came out of the public works arena in a public entity, and before that, now you also served our country. And could you talk just a little bit about your experiences as an engineer and as a veteran, and maybe some of the, because I think that's something that's always overlooked for firms. And I hear firms all the time saying, we need to hire people. And I'm always saying, well, you need to look at veterans that are out there that might be appropriate for some of the needs that you're trying to fill. And I think sometimes veterans get overlooked. Let's just call it what it is. And I maybe just kind of just talk through us and share your experience as a veteran coming in and working in the design industry.
Sure. Side, in Texas, and many other markets very similarly, there's a lot of private firms that do a lot of public works project. The firm previously was more focused on MUDs, or municipal utility districts here in Texas, which anything outside of a city pretty much, is serviced by a MUD. So it's very, very, very necessary, and you're genuinely and legitimately focused on developing a community. However, it's very slow and it's very political. So, hopping over to private development for me is an excitement factor. The turnaround of projects, the speed of which a developer wants a permit, wants information, is dramatically accelerated. So that sort of fire gets me interested and engaged in what I'm developing, and it makes me feel like I'm even a part of the deal. Like I'm bringing value to the deal, but I'm also feel like I'm an investor on this deal. So that's what I really like about being a private development consultant. Going into the veteran aspect, I absolutely agree. So there's so many loaded questions, loaded elements to hiring veterans in the industry today, and any industry for that matter. Going into college, I recognize that a lot of veterans tend to focus on STEM field and business related degrees. I think a lot of us come out of service expecting to find something that isn't going to be handed to us necessarily, because we've seen experienced so much in the military. So we focus on degrees that have, a distinct ROI of our time. Going back to school, for me, I got out of active duty service in 2012 and continued in National Guard for another 2 years after that. But I started at the University of Houston in 2012, literally it was actually the day after I separated from active duty service. And I'll tell you about a culture shock. I was in Afghanistan just 3 months prior to that too, for an entire year. So coming into Houston to a college of 18 to 22-year-old folks, of which actually Houston is very, there's a huge diversity there. So there was actually a significant veteran population, but I didn't find them until probably 6 months, a year in. But that culture shock alone dissuades a lot of veterans from pursuing education in the first place. They don't even pursue that bill, even though the benefits are there. But for those of us that are actually in higher education and use our benefits, you start to kind of coalesce around a certain identity or discipline that you learned in the military. And a lot of veterans don't know that they carry this. It's something that I talk to veterans all the time. I kind of spearheaded a few veteran advocacy efforts at the University of Houston and in the city as well, and here in Houston. And a lot of veterans come to me and they talk to me. I don't know how to articulate my experience. I don't know how it's relevant to anything that I'm doing, not only in education, but afterwards in their professional careers. It's the fact that veterans don't know how to articulate their experience to a civilian hiring manager or hiring professional. They don't understand how that translates to a civilian job. But what's something that I think, I feel personally that every veteran carries within them is the fact that they were trained under a specific regimen, a specific hierarchy of discipline. And they didn't even know that you could call it brainwashing, you can call it whatever you want, but we are bred professionals. We are bred to be, effective not only on the battlefield, but, in garrison, which we call back at the base, effective within our teams, within our families, within our communities. Those elements carry with us, but a lot of veterans don't even understand that that's actually a part of who they are as a person. And that's what believe makes veterans a force multiplier. They've got that secret sauce that you're always looking for. I know that you're in your hiring realm, you're always looking for great talent that provides that X factor. And I always believe that veterans, bar none, there's some exceptions here and there, but for those who actually lived and espoused the values of the military service that they were, pursuing at that time, I feel that, if they unlocked those things, those lessons learned that they carried with them throughout the service, they would be, a force multiplier for their team, for their product, for their organization. A lot of veterans, especially here in Texas, we by and large are entrepreneurs. We begin our own startups, we start our own companies, and we pursue all sorts of stuff. So it's kind of hard to articulate that, coming from a veteran to a civilian, if you don't have the language to actually communicate that. And there's a lot of organizations out there that help that, but by and large, that's generally what veterans struggle with when it comes to hiring and putting the resume together, interviewing, communicating with other people about what they did in the military and how's that relevant to creating a construction document set for a multifamily building or something to that effect. It's distinctly unique to this kind of community, but it's something that hiring managers, recruiters, and whatnot need to almost coax out of potential candidates, because I feel once you get it out, like that's a gem, hiding in the rough there. You're going to have a stellar candidate on your hands for sure.
So it's almost like, these guys, not only does the veteran need to be educated about how to present themselves, but the hiring manager needs to be sufficiently educated about, like you said, how to pull those things out of those individuals so that they get a quality interview and they're able to gain knowledge and information in terms of what this individual brings to the table.
Exactly. I think that a lot of it really needs to be translated to the potential employer too. The employer, may always think that, we got to hire veterans. They have something going on with them that makes them, a great candidate, but they may not know why. And part of the reason why I believe that all veterans, have kind of some sort of special characteristic to them is the fact that we're, immersed in supply chain management. We're immersed in squad, low tactical leadership skills. We're immersed in not only survival on a realistic scale, but survival on an organizational scale. We have, depending on your character service. So my background was in the Army as a forward observer with scout recon platoons for both my tours to Iraq and Afghanistan. So it was a little bit more active, a little more kinetic, as we used to call it. So more conventional warfare, but we also had a distinct non-lethal / populist-centric operational focus as well, where we developed, agriculture projects. We worked on roads, mosques, schools. We developed populace in the communities to strengthen them so they could push out any kind of insurgent force that was within their villages, within whatever we're occupying. So, not everybody has that kind of character of service, but they get to have some level of service where they're participating in this grand, perhaps a machine, perhaps, some structure that is accomplishing a mission. And it's, the beauty of it is that everybody participates in decentralized command. Everybody participates in being a decisive actor on the battlefield, regardless if they're engaged in combat or not. They're able to determine, what their priorities are. They're able to execute on it, and they're able to do it in a systematic way that, most civilians may not necessarily get that kind of skill until well after college, until their 5th or 10th year in whatever firm they're working for. Veterans are, in the military, you're forced to do that within the first year. You're not going to survive basic training or boot camp, without getting into that role. So everyone has that mentality. They just don't know how to unlock it and put that into effect when they go to a civilian career or go to college.
Okay. So what advice do you give your peers that you know of that are coming out, or maybe somebody that you serve with that's now coming out of the military and is saying, hey, Shaun, I'm trying to get into engineering as well. What advice are you specifically giving them?
I think really when it comes down to it, I kind of focus on a couple of aspects. I really kind of dive deeper rather into their personal character. I think not everybody is suited for whatever they look at. So often this kind of comes up in a conversation. They look at the list of salaries of what will give them the most money after college. Yeah, which reasonable. A lot of veterans have families coming out of the military service. A lot of them just want to get out there and make money and support themselves. But, ultimately it's really about what's going to, make them happy. Some of the things that I really focus on is just, find what your purpose is, something that you feel that you could do obviously, there's a whole sorts of cliche elements to that. We could be do for free and then do that for a living kind of thing. That may not also be realistic, but just find something that, gives you fire, gives you that fire in your belly to pursue it and become, that professional role. And there's something that I think veterans kind of do well on is that they kind of avoid even these kind of corporate or traditional roles in the professional world to kind of pursue their own ventures. They often start their own companies, they start their own ventures, they co-partner with somebody else. They provide that kind of secret element that I think that, spices up the founding or the founders of a company when you start to bootstrap your own firm or bootstrap your venture. I think a veteran in the mix kind of gives you an element of depth of experience that you might not otherwise have. So I always kind of encourage veterans to, if they have the opportunity to, explore their options and find what resonates them and what makes them happy, honestly, at the end of the day. Not just go for that high salary mark on whatever whatever major, degree program list you're looking at on Google.
Yeah. And that's hard. That's a hard conversation to have because you're dealing with people that, unfortunately, we don't pay our military as much as we should be paying them. And so when they come out, everybody's like feast or famine. I got to make up for what I missed out on. And that's a hard mindset to overcome. And I think, I would imagine just looking at what you've experienced and where you are now versus where you were before. You see the differences in terms of what it takes to kind of build up your resume, to kind of take the skill set that you had coming out of the military, then taking it through college, through the university setting, and then out into the workforce. It has really prepared you for something even beyond what, a normal person would have coming out of university and matriculating through 4 years of college without any military experience.
Sure. And I honestly, I've kind of seen both sides. So I had the privilege to serve as student body president at the University of Houston for a year.
That's right.
I was in student government for a little bit before that. How I got involved in that really was kind of because of the military. I had that public service itch. I needed to scratch. I needed to do something for other people. I was getting paid to go to school because of the GI Bill. Thankfully, because of the program that exists, and I knew I needed to contribute it to the community that was providing me with education, and I wanted to help other people, advocate for other people, and make sure that people were aware of their benefits, aware of the resources they had available. So just kind of got involved with student government, kind of on the on my off time, and it kind of snowballed into election, and eventually, was able to serve as the president over 43,000 people, students rather, in the second most diverse research institution in the country. So it was definitely a distinct opportunity for me to see, what it means to be, a student, from the freshman perspective, straight like true freshman perspective, coming out of high school, coming into college. So I never really had that experience. I was more or less in the military, almost out of college, or out of high school rather. And I think that, a lot of parents come into school thinking that there is this huge divide between them and the younger generation of students that surround them in classroom. And in a lot of ways, yes, that's true. Our experience definitely distinguishes us and differentiates us in a very special way, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we have a distinct advantage or, absolute advantage over anybody. It's just different. I think that people coming out of college, out of high school into college, have just as much an opportunity to be as strong a leader, as strong as a professional, strong in their discipline as anybody else. I think that there's opportunities at every university institution that you go to. You're always going to have a distinct opportunity to contribute to the school, contribute to the community, whether it be a student organization, whether it be advocating for your college, advocating for the university, participating in athletics. Those things all shape you as a leader, all shape you as a professional. And I think that, from a recruiting standpoint, or from just a hiring standpoint, companies and owners are looking for people who participate in these sort of things. So, if you're on the football team or you're in, some student organization focused on perhaps a cultural background or, something, technology related or whatever it might be, you're going to have a leadership opportunity that develops you into a strong professional and leader going into the position, so you can know what it means to actually, manage resources, manage time. For me, it was a unique opportunity being student body president to not have the hierarchy of the military, because I was a sergeant in the military. So, I was a non-commissioned officer. I had folks under me, around 8 to 10 people at a time. And I had the power of rank, I had the power of this hierarchy behind me to say, you're going to execute this plan that I've established because I am ranked higher than you. Well, in the student body president role, I didn't have that luxury. There was, large early 20s, some teenage students in my Senate or within my cabinet or, other student organizations. They don't have any requirement to execute on my plan. You have to develop ownership with them, give them skin in the game. And that's a very unique thing. A lot of veteran leaders don't get a chance to learn because you don't have to give that to them. You already have their skin in the game because they're invested. They've signed a contract. They're part of the military. Whereas in a civilian role, that's a distinct opportunity, or that's an element that any leader in any firm, any professional industry has, is because you have to develop, ownership in your subordinate team members. You have to develop ownership in your leaders. You have to lead up and down the chain. So it's definitely unique to be a veteran in this industry and in higher education, but it's not an absolute advantage in my opinion. I think typical civilian routes provide just as many different opportunities. It's just a different character, different value perhaps.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, did you see yourself in this current position now when you were just coming out of Afghanistan in 2011, 2012? Is this where you thought you'd be in about 5 years?
I knew I wanted to get my degree. My initial aspirations was to potentially get my officer commission and go back into the Army.
Okay.
But I found out pretty quickly that I was happy being a civilian. Not having to shave is a nice thing there.
Right.
I found out, personally, I knew pretty early on, even when I was in the military, that I wanted to be a civil engineer, even potentially before the military. My father is a structural designer, and he's been doing that since before I was born. He's worked in sorts of firms. He's most recently worked on multifamily projects, doing, steel beam timber projects and whatnot.
So it's in the blood.
Yeah. So I distinctly remember my dad bringing home plans when I was, even when I was in diapers, and me trying to draw on them, color in the lines kind of thing. It's definitely something that's been pervasive and around me my entire life. But what kind of sealed the deal for me was in the military. When I was in Iraq and Afghanistan, for that matter, we did a lot of projects with the State Department. We did a lot of projects with USAID, which is the International Development Arm of the State Department. And I worked with civil engineers pretty closely on those projects with my lieutenant. We worked on, like I said before, mosques, schools, roadways, agricultural projects, watershed projects, trying to basically develop infrastructure for these villages who had been there for hundreds of years. Their cultural background span longer than ours, and they're having a hard time. They don't even have refrigeration. They don't have electricity. Or centralized plumbing. It's something that really struck a chord with me. The confluence of everything in my family coming into a point where it's directly helping somebody. Or even seeing an Afghan elder cut the ribbon on a school where none had existed before, where 20 to 30 to 40 students effectively had to take all their classes and outdoors. Something that I'm in class because Afghanistan, there's a lot of snow during 4 or 5 months of the year, especially up in the Hindu Kush and Himalayas area, and it's hot during the summer. So, seeing that direct reward, not necessarily as an engineer, but as somebody, supporting an engineering role, was very rewarding. And I wanted to do that both domestically and internationally. So I found that I wanted to do that either in my home, in my communities, or domestically, or potentially do international development. So coming into college, I knew very early on that I wanted to do that. I had the opportunity to apply to University of Houston while I was in Afghanistan. I had a satellite TACSAT terminal that I was able to connect to use the Wi-Fi, the internet over there. Very, very slow, obviously, but I applied to and found out I was accepted to a UH while I was over there, and knew that was my plan even in the last months of our deployment as we were transitioning over to the next unit. I had a pretty distinct mission, at least coming back from the military, and then for the next 3 or 4 years, I was doing engineering, studies as well, and enjoyed that. Took advantage of all the time I had as extracurriculars. I worked a bit, but also did the student government, as I mentioned before. And it was around, I think I mentioned in October or November when I heard Will talking on that podcast. And I had already had, that was my third internship at that point. I had done a structural one. I found out early on I didn't want to do structural. Civil engineering, facing relationships, a lot of communication. I enjoy people interactions. I like developing relationships. And I like leveraging a technical background for the purpose of improving and providing value to somebody's bottom line and providing value to somebody's life in general. So when I listened to that podcast in October, November, I tend to do this with a lot of folks. I write down their name in my notebook. I'm really distinct about focusing on mentor-menteeship relationships. I tend to write down names of people who I think to reach out to, folks who I think resonate with me personally or professionally, and I want to learn more about what they're all about. It wasn't an interest in I'm going to work for Big Red Dog in 1 year or whatever. I wanted to find out more about Will and the company, and lo and behold, probably 2 months later, I had a friend who got picked up as the structural line leader here in the company. Reached out to him, set up a meeting with some of the principals here in Houston. Right after that, I knew right away that this was the firm that I wanted to be a part of. So continued conversations from there. Joined in May and haven't looked back. It's been a hell of a ride so far.
That's awesome. I love hearing stories like that, and certainly I'm sure they're glad to have you. I mean, it is a very unique firm. I because we work with you guys, sometimes I get a chance to talk to other people about Big Red Dog and about the type of firm that it is. And you're not a normal, I mean, I've worked with Carter and Burgess and some of the old line engineering firms that have dotted the landscape of the design industry over the decades. And you guys are just totally different. It's even hard to describe in some way. Will does a good job of it, but yes, I mean, you guys are different, and there are other firms that are out there that are kind of doing design work a little differently than has been done in the past. So I think it's interesting, and I look forward to seeing what the next chapter is for Big Red Dog. I think 2018 is going to be a very interesting year for you guys.
Yeah, it absolutely will. And honestly, I don't think what we have here is something secret. I think this is a model, in my opinion, that will be replicated across the industry going forward. I'm not necessarily, young relative to other graduate project engineer levels. I'm 31, going on 32, and I'm still technically a millennial, I guess, in the upper range, but I had the opportunity to be immersed around many students of that generation, of the younger millennial generation, being student body president. I had become distinctly aware of the issues and the friction and the pain points that they have going into their professional careers, not necessarily engineering in general, but other industries as well. And coming into our industry specifically, I think that millennials and those coming out of college now expect a different caliber of employment than many did in the past. I mean, it's just a generational evolution, of course. It's going to change regardless. But I'm convinced that, it's not necessarily just what Will has to provide, but the team at Big Red Dog has to provide. The culture that we've created here is something that's going to pop up in other firms around the country. Absolutely. I don't think that any firm that has an interest in sticking around is not going to change. I think this is the pathway forward for this industry. And honestly, I think I have a more radical approach. I think this industry will change dramatically in the next 10 to 20 years to become a commoditized industry where we, have, I think you've mentioned this in the past with the gig economy. This industry focuses on human hours of contribution towards a design project. What we have at Big Red Dog, our commodity is the service of engineering services. Our product, however, is what we encapsulate that with and provide to the client. We communicate effectively. We're transparent. We provide a very distinct high level of service and accuracy in our plans, but we also provide the brand that we're putting forward. We're showing them, our employees are happy, our past clients are happy. These are folks who are committed to our mission and committed to providing value to your deal. This, anybody can get civil engineering services, regardless. They can find the cheapest billable rate on the market and go with that. But they're not going to get the product. They'll get the same commodity, but it'll be a low quality product. And I think that our industry is generally, the trajectory is going towards a commoditization that allows for professionals in this industry to be almost independent or fluid in terms of what they commit to. They can spend 6 months on a few projects, take a year hiatus, go to Fiji or something, if they, whatever it might be, jump on the projects. We are already kind of doing that in Big Red Dog. We have people who take hiatus and take 6 months to go pursue photography, or go potentially explore other places of the world. That capacity is already there, built into organizations like ours and other firms. I don't see that being a temporary benefit. That's something that my generation and the younger millennials and my children eventually are going to want and continue to want going forward. They want that flexibility, optionality. Straight out of college. They don't necessarily care about being given the highest level pay or et cetera. They want something that gives them freedom. Gives them something, the ability to express themselves. I think we always talk about the side hustle with millennials. I don't really like that term because it implies that it's not important. For us, it's about our primary mission. Is taking care of ourselves. And whether we do that with our, the job that takes the most time out of our day, or the job that doesn't, it doesn't matter. You can call it the side hustle or whatever you want, but it's something that contributes to us as a character, as a person, and finds purpose in us individually. And I think it's important, going forward. I don't think we want to ignore that. I think that's going to become even more important as we go forward. As our students start graduating into this program and in this career, I think we'll find that more and more often in the case where we have firms and companies having to support that.
Yeah, man. I couldn't have said that better. And I think we'll have to put a bow in it right there. I certainly want to be respectful of our listening audience, and we'll definitely, you're setting me up here, Shaun, because now you're going to make me want to have you back on the show for a part 2, and we'll have to continue the discussion. But just a lot of really good information that I think the audience needs to hear. And especially, I'm going to try to get this podcast out in the hands of, any veterans that are out there that are looking to get into the design industry and just need a word of encouragement. Sometimes it's just simply that, to hear, oh, well, if he could do it, I'm going to try it, and I think that's really important. So I appreciate your transparency. I appreciate your willingness to share. We're not going to let you off the hook though, without just sharing a little bit more about who Shaun is. And so just tell me, what was the last book that you read?
Shoot. Well, I tend to read 2 books simultaneously since if I given the chance,
multitasker.
Not at the same time.
Right.
But I tend to read a lot of nonfiction, so I tell myself I have to be reading a fiction book, as well. And I kind of alternate. In the morning, I allow myself professional nonfiction kind of things. In the evening, I tend to listen to comedy or fiction audio. And so the last fiction book I just read, I just completed The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman, which is excellent. It was an audiobook. I don't have many opportunities to read books by the fire or anything. I've got 3 kids under 3 at home. So limited opportunity there. So I'm completing a nonfiction book presently called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink.
Oh yeah, it's a good book.
Leif Babin, which I'm not really usually too big on veteran authors. It's taken me a while to get to this book, and I've heard Jocko talk on a few podcasts before, and I'm not really into that big tough guy persona. Like, you got to get up at 4:30 in the morning and attack the day. The enemy's up. You got to get out there, snipers do kind of thing. And because I heard that all, it was so pervasive in when I was in the military. So, but fine reading this book has been definitely revitalized some of the military training that I've had in the past. I've learned a little bit more about myself as a leader and how to kind of articulate that in my role and in my professional and personal life. Even it's definitely a great book. I would take a look at it if anybody's interested in the Iraq or Afghanistan war. They intersperse their own experiences in the military along with the application to business. It may be a little bit, disconnected from some of the civilian experiences, but for somebody in the military, it absolutely makes a lot of sense. A lot of experiences I've shared with them in that book as well. So I recommend it for sure.
Okay. All right, cool. So what was, or rather I should say, where was the last place you went on vacation?
Well, I did say that I have 3 kids under 3 at home. So,
right. So it's not much vacation for you.
It was, my third was born 2 or 3 months ago, so we went to deliver him. No, our last vacation, my wife Paige would kill me for calling this a vacation. So in 2015, when I was student body president, University of Houston had a stellar football season. Tom Herman, although he's at UT now, I don't begrudge him that, took us to the Peach Bowl that year, and we were ranked number 13. So we took a road trip out to Atlanta to celebrate New Year's with a few friends out there and some family that I had there. I got to see the game, see them beat Florida State, go Cougs. I was definitely a great end cap to the season. I'm excited for them to take it back to a New Year's Six Bowl again. I'm sure it's on the horizon. UCF is doing well this season. I'm excited for the American Conference. I think we got it in us.
Okay, well, yeah, let's see what happens. Maybe they'll widen the bowl series and add 4 more teams. So
sure,
we can see what happens. That's interesting. If you could binge watch one TV show, old or new, what would it be?
Oh, well, I'm actually in mid binge right now with my wife. We're watching all of the Star Trek series from chronological order. Yeah, it's taken me. So I've not seen all of them. I've seen bits and pieces of every single type of series.
Yeah.
So we're starting with Enterprise, which is the first chronological, and then the new series came out, Discovery, and that's by the original series. And it's kind of embarrassing because one of our daughters, we have twin daughters who are 2 years old, and one of them is named Jadzia, which is named after a character in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, because my wife is a big Trekkie. And I have not seen the entirety of Deep Space Nine, so I feel like I'm obligated to at least watch the entirety of that series, and then might as well watch the entire thing. But yeah, that's something that we tend to do after the kids go to bed. We've been turning to that every now and then.
Okay.
Personally, a lot of Marvel stuff. I tend to pick up the Punishers, the one thing I'm working on now.
Yeah, I heard it's really good. I haven't had a chance to watch it, but I hear it's really good. So that's awesome. And so yeah, I guess that's about it. I mean, you've shared, you've bared your soul a little bit with the listening audience. So we appreciate that, and we appreciate you sharing, man. And thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule just to be with us on this podcast. So we're definitely going to work it out to get you back on. I think what you have to say and your voice for the veteran audience out there that's trying to break into or has already broken into the design industry and just wants to hear a friendly voice that will encourage them to keep going in the direction that they're going in. I think it's necessary to share that. And I'm encouraging firms to be more proactive about getting more veterans involved. I mean, we have a very finite resource of people out there available for the roles that need to be filled. I mean, you guys know that perfectly well at Big Red Dog because you have a number of key positions that need to be filled, just like a lot of your peer firms out there do. So we just want to encourage people to take on anybody that's out there that's viable and that could make a difference in your organization the same way that you've done at Big Red Dog. So I applaud you. I thank you for your service, and I really appreciate you taking time to be on with us.
No, it's been a privilege being on here with you. And I just wanted to send a quick note for if there are any veterans listening, you're not alone. Seek out other folks in your community. Reach out to me. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Shaun Theriot-Smith there. Any of the social media platforms, it's at Theriot-Smith. Definitely reach out, make a friend, develop yourself as an individual, and you can accomplish things out of the military service. So you're not alone.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, and we're definitely going to put all of Shaun's contact information in our show notes. So you will have access to that as well. And we will put this online and we'll spread this out on social media and try to get it onto some of the veteran sites as well to encourage them to listen in. And I'm sure Shaun will share it with his body of friends and colleagues. So there won't be any shortage of this podcast episode getting around and getting into the hands of the right people. So, but thanks again, Shaun. We really appreciate having you on.
No, thank you, Randy.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the next time.
Absolutely. Well, folks, listen, I want to thank you again for listening to another episode of the Zweig Letter Podcast. As you know, we've changed up a lot of things, and the biggest thing that we've changed is that we're now giving the Zweig Letter away for free. That's right. You've heard it. FREE. All you have to do is go to zweiggroup.com, click on the Zweig Letter icon, and just enter your email address. I don't need your name. I don't need your address. I don't need your blood type. All I need is your email address, and you can get the Zweig Letter for free, delivered digitally every Monday morning. And what's even better if you want to have your whole company or your whole team get the Zweig Letter so that you guys can discuss it at the water cooler and, discuss some of the great topics that are happening out there. Even Will Schneer from Big Red Dog has written some outstanding articles in the Zweig Letter, but there's just, 12 to 14 pages of outstanding information on a weekly basis. I believe it is the longest running newsletter in the design industry. So I would encourage you to make yourself available to that resource. It is free and it is my gift to you. Remember, sharing is caring. We'd also appreciate it. The Zweig Letter podcast comes out both on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play. We hope to be on Spotify very soon. And you can also catch us on YouTube. So you can download and listen to this in several different mediums and several different forms. And if you're so inclined and you want to give us a 5-star review, we'd really appreciate it. So feel free to fill that out on iTunes or Stitcher, anywhere that you get your podcast. But we really appreciate you. We appreciate everybody in the listening audience. And we thank you again. And thank you for our guests and for all the amazing people that we're able to have on this show on a weekly basis. We could not do it without you. Once again, I'm Randy Wilburn, and you're listening to the Zweig Letter Podcast, part of Zweig Group Media. Remember, we exist to make you more successful. Bye for now.
Thanks for tuning in to this Zweig Letter Podcast episode. If you want more wisdom and inspiration, in addition to information about M&A, strategic planning, HR, and marketing your firm, subscribe now to the digital version of the Zweig Letter free of charge. Just visit thezweigletter.com/subscribe and leave your email address. Your free subscription will begin immediately.